Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I bought my first house in Conyers back in 2017. Nothing fancy, just a small place with a yard where I could finally have some peace and quiet after years of apartment living. I worked night shifts at a distribution center, so my sleep schedule was all backwards. Most nights I get home around 2 in the morning, wind down for a bit, and try to sleep until noon. That particular night in July 2019, I couldn't sleep. Something felt off. Maybe it was the humidity, or maybe just one of those restless nights. I was sitting in my living room around 4 in the morning, lights off, just scrolling through my phone when I heard voices outside. At first I thought maybe it was some kids walking home late, but then I heard more voices. They were loud, aggressive. I got up and looked out my front window. There were about 6 or 7 people standing in my front yard. My neighbors too. They were all grouped together near the street, and it looked like some kind of argument was happening. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but the body language was tense. I grabbed my phone to call the police, but before I could dial, I saw 3 figures approaching from the sidewalk. Teenagers by the look of them. Skinny kids in hoodies. At 4 in the morning, that alone would have been weird. But what happened next made my blood run cold. One of them pulled out a gun, then another. The third one had something in his hand too, though I couldn't see what it was from my window. The tallest one started yelling at the group in my yard. He demanded their wallets and phones and everything they had. He told them to hand it all over right now. One of my neighbors, an older guy who lived 3 houses down, tried to step back. He said they didn't want any trouble. The kid with the gun yelled back that he wanted everything. He asked if they thought this was a joke. Then I heard the gunshot. One of the other teens had fired into the air. Everyone in the yard started screaming. People dropped to the ground. One woman was crying. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. I fumbled for the gun safe I kept in my hall closet. I'm not some gun nut. I'd inherited the 9mm from my dad and kept it mostly because my uncle, who's a sheriff's deputy 2 counties over, had insisted I should have something for home protection. I loaded it with trembling fingers and moved back to the window. The kids were grabbing phones and wallets from people. One of them kicked a guy who wasn't moving fast enough. Then the tall one turned and looked directly at my house. He started walking toward my front door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I moved away from the window and positioned myself behind my couch. I called 911. The dispatcher answered and asked about my emergency. I told her there was a robbery happening in my front yard. 3 armed teenagers. They'd just fired a shot. One of them was walking toward my house right now. She told me to stay inside and away from windows. She said officers were on the way. I told her they were coming to my door, that I had a gun, that I didn't know what to do. She said not to engage unless my life was in immediate danger. She told me to stay on the line. I heard my doorknob rattle, then a kick. The door shook in its frame. The kid outside yelled for me to open up. He said he knew I was in there. Another kick. The frame started to splinter. I told the dispatcher they were breaking in. The door burst open. The tall one came through first, gun raised. The second one was right behind him. He yelled asking where my stuff was. He told me to give it up now or else. He saw me behind the couch, saw my gun. For a split second we just stared at each other. Then he raised his weapon and fired. The bullet hit my couch. Stuffing exploded into the air. I didn't think. I just reacted. I fired back. The noise was deafening. My ears rang. The tall one went down immediately. The second one tried to run but stumbled. I fired again. He dropped in my doorway. The third one, who'd been standing on my porch, turned and ran. But my neighbor, the older guy who'd tried to back away earlier, had apparently gone to his own house and gotten his shotgun. I heard 2 blasts from down the street. Then silence, except for the ringing in my ears and someone sobbing outside. The police arrived 6 minutes later. Paramedics came. All 3 teenagers were dead. The officers questioned everyone. They took my gun, took my statement, took photos of everything. The detective who interviewed me was straightforward. He said I was defending my home and my neighbors. The teens had fired first. He said this was clearly self-defense. He told me I wasn't being charged with anything. I moved out of that house 2 months later. Couldn't stand being there anymore. Every time I walked through that door, I saw those kids. But it wasn't over. This past May, I got served with papers. The parents of all 3 teenagers were suing me. They wanted damages. They claimed I had no right to shoot back, that their kids were just children who made a mistake, that I should have let them rob everyone and leave. Their kids had invaded my home with guns, had fired at people, had fired at me, and now their parents wanted money because I defended myself. My lawyer says the case is absurd, that no jury would side with them, but they're still going forward with it. They did a news interview last month. One of the mothers stood there crying and said her son was a good boy who just made one bad choice. She said I murdered him. She left out the part where he broke into my house, where he shot at me first, where he and his friends terrorized an entire neighborhood at gunpoint. The trial date hasn't been set yet. My lawyer is confident, but I can't sleep anymore. Not like I used to. I keep thinking about how those parents raised their kids, how they can stand there demanding justice while ignoring everything their children did. Some days I wonder if they really believe what they're saying, if they've convinced themselves their kids were innocent. Other days I think they just want money and found an easy target. Either way, I'm still here. I live alone in a small apartment downtown. It works perfectly for me because I can control my environment and keep things predictable. My older sister was moving across the country with her new husband, and their route brought them near my city. I invited them over for Friday night game night, thinking it would be nice to see her and get to know him better. My sister called me 3 days before and asked if they could stay the whole weekend instead of just Friday night. I hesitated because I barely knew her husband, but she was my sister and they were in the middle of a big move. I said yes, even though it made me a bit uncomfortable. They were supposed to arrive at 2 in the afternoon on Friday. I cleaned my apartment and prepared snacks for game night. 2 o'clock came and went. My sister texted me saying they were running behind and would be there by 4. Fine, things happen, but 4 o'clock passed 2, then 5, then 6. They finally showed up at 6 in the evening, 4 hours late from when they originally planned to arrive. My sister apologized for being late and said the drive took longer than expected. I told her it was okay and that I was just glad they made it safely. Her husband walked in carrying their bags like he owned the place. He immediately started looking around my apartment and making comments about how cute and cozy it was for one person. Something about the way he said it rubbed me wrong, but I ignored it. I showed them where they could put their things and offered them drinks. We settled in the living room and started chatting about their move. Her husband kept trying to act like we were already close siblings. He would make jokes at my expense and then laugh like we had been doing this for years. He told me that my sister had mentioned I was pretty sensitive about stuff and said we would have to toughen me up this weekend. I told him I wasn't really looking to be toughened up and that I was fine how I am. He responded by saying that was exactly what a little child would say, and that no adult listens to the whining of a little child. I felt my jaw tighten. My sister laughed nervously but didn't say anything to defend me. I tried to brush it off and changed the subject to their new house. When I mentioned some of the improvements I had done to my own apartment, he jumped in again and said I was being boastful. He acted like he didn't know we were there to hear me brag. I had only mentioned painting my bathroom and fixing a leaky faucet. It wasn't bragging, it was normal conversation. I stopped talking and just nodded along when they continued telling me about their plans. We decided to order pizza for dinner. I reminded my sister that my apartment was completely gluten-free because I have celiac disease. She knew this already. I had told her weeks ago not to bring any gluten into my home because even cross-contamination can make me sick. My sister told me they had brought cereal for breakfast the next day and it had wheat in it. She assured me not to worry because they brought their own bowl and disposable spoons so they wouldn't contaminate anything. I stared at her. She knew better than this. Bringing gluten into my home at all was disrespectful, even if they tried to be careful about it. I reminded her that I had asked her not to bring gluten here. She insisted it was fine and that they were being really careful. I didn't push it further because I was already feeling drained from her husband's comments. We ate dinner and started playing board games. Things were going okay until her husband started making more jokes about me being childish and overly sensitive. I have a sensory issue with certain sounds. The sound of metal scraping against plates or bowls is physically painful for me. It makes my whole body flinch and I have to cover my ears. My sister knows this because we grew up together. She has seen me react to it hundreds of times. While we were eating dessert, my sister accidentally scraped her knife against her plate. The sound shot through me and I winced. My sister immediately apologized and said she forgot about my sensitivity. Her husband asked what she forgot about. My sister explained that I had this thing with scraping sounds and that it really bothered me. Her husband looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. Then he picked up his fork, pressed it hard against his plate, and dragged it across the surface. The screeching sound filled the room. He stared right at me with a grin on his face while he did it. The sound was awful. I covered my ears and felt my whole body tense up. When he stopped, I looked at him directly and told him if he ever did that again in my home, he would be kicked out immediately. His grin disappeared. My sister's mouth fell open. She said I was being really dramatic and that he was just teasing me. I told her he deliberately did something he knew would hurt me, and that wasn't teasing but cruelty. Her husband insisted he was just joking around, and that I needed to lighten up. I said I didn't care if he thought it was a joke. I told him this was my home and I had just said my boundary. I said he could either respect it or leave. The mood shifted completely. They both got quiet and started packing up their things. My sister kept insisting I was overreacting and being too sensitive. Her husband wouldn't even look at me. Within an hour, they were gone. My sister texted me later that night saying I had ruined their visit and embarrassed her husband. She said siblings are supposed to tease each other and that he was just trying to bond with me. I told her what he did was deliberately disrespectful and that bonding doesn't involve causing someone pain on purpose. She hasn't responded to that message yet. Part of me feels guilty for being so harsh, but another part of me knows I did the right thing. I bought this place back in 2017. It wasn't much to look at then, but the price was right and the land had potential. The house sat about 50 feet back from the road, and the property line ran right along the shoulder. That's where the memorial was. I noticed it the first time I came to look at the place. An old wooden cross, maybe 4 feet tall, leaning hard to one side. There were some faded plastic flowers zip-tied to it, and a couple of laminated signs that might have had a name and dates on them once. The realtor mentioned it briefly. Said someone died there in a drunk driving accident back in 2002. Hit the big oak tree that used to stand on the corner. The tree came down during a storm in 2012, but the memorial stayed. For the first few years I lived there, I'd see people stop by occasionally. An older couple would show up every few months, straighten the cross, leave fresh flowers. Then those visits became less frequent. By 2020, I hadn't seen anyone there in over a year. The cross was rotting at the base, tilting worse each season. The flowers were sun-bleached and cracked. The signs were completely illegible, just blank rectangles of cloudy plastic. Weeds had taken over the whole corner, growing up through the old flower arrangements and around the base of the cross. I let it be for a long time. It felt wrong to touch it, even though it was technically on my property. But last year I decided to finally put up a privacy fence. I've been planning it for months, saved up the money, got the permits. When the surveyor came out to mark the lines, the memorial was directly in the path, dead center of where the fence needed to go. I waited another 2 months, thinking maybe someone would show up. Nobody did. The memorial was falling apart, becoming an actual safety hazard. The cross was so rotted it could have blown over in a strong wind and hit a car. So I made the call. I pulled out what was left of it, cleared the weeds, and built my fence. Kept everything in a plastic bin in my garage, just in case someone ever came looking for it. That was almost a year ago. Then 3 days ago, I heard pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. I opened it to find a woman I'd never seen before, probably in her early 50s, red-faced and already yelling before I could even say hello. She demanded to know where her memorial was. She was screaming about how I destroyed it. I tried to explain that I didn't know what she was talking about at first, but she cut me off. She said I knew exactly what she meant and that the memorial on the corner was hers. I explained to her that the memorial had been abandoned for years and that it was on my property. I'd removed it when I built my fence. She got even angrier. She insisted it was her property and that I had no right to touch it. I offered to show her the survey that proved the land was mine. She said she didn't care about any survey. She told me the memorial was for her brother and that I destroyed it. Then she threatened to sue me for everything I had. I tried to stay calm. I told her the memorial had been deteriorating for years and nobody had maintained it. I explained that it was on my land and that I'd kept everything that was left of it if she wanted it. She wasn't listening. She started screaming louder, calling me names, telling me I was heartless and cruel. Then she pulled out her phone and started recording my house, walking around my front yard like she owned it. She said she was documenting everything and that I was going to pay for what I'd done. I told her she needed to leave my property. She refused. She said she wasn't going anywhere until I rebuilt what I destroyed. She walked around to the side yard, heading for the fence. I followed her, telling her again to leave. She ignored me completely. When she got to the fence, she actually tried to climb it. She got 1 foot up on a crossbeam before I shouted at her to stop. I warned her to get off my fence and told her I was calling the police if she didn't leave. She told me to go ahead and call them. She said they'd arrest me for what I did. I gave her one last warning to leave. She challenged me to make her. She didn't think I'd actually do it. I pulled out my phone and dialed. She saw me and immediately pulled out her own phone and called too. I could hear her on the line, hysterical, telling the dispatcher that I destroyed her property and was threatening her. 2 officers showed up about 10 minutes later. By then she'd walked back to the front yard but was still screaming at me from the sidewalk. I explained the situation. I showed them my property deed, the survey I'd had done, and photos I'd taken of the deteriorated memorial before I removed it. The officers looked at everything, then walked over to her. One of the officers told her this was my property and that the memorial had been on my land. He said I had every legal right to remove it. She insisted that wasn't true. She said she had rights and that the memorial had been there for 20 years. The officer explained that the length of time didn't give her ownership of my property. He told her she needed to leave. She refused. She said she wasn't leaving until I fixed everything. The officer warned her that she was trespassing and that if she didn't leave, they'd have to arrest her. She said the whole thing was insane and that I was the one who should be arrested. She was screaming so loud the neighbors had come out to watch. The officers tried to guide her toward her car, parked down the street. She jerked her arm away from one of them, still yelling. The officer reached for her arm again, trying to escort her off my property. That's when she shoved him. Not a little push, both hands, hard right in the chest. The officer stumbled back a step, and his partner immediately grabbed her. She fought them, screaming the whole time when they put her in handcuffs. The officer told her she was under arrest for trespassing, disorderly conduct, and assault on an officer. She kept screaming that it was illegal and that they couldn't do this to her. They put her in the back of the patrol car while she kicked the seat and screamed. One officer stayed to finish the report while his partner drove her away. He told me I could press additional charges for harassment if I wanted. I said I'd think about it. The whole thing happened because I cleaned up an abandoned memorial that was rotting away on my own property. She never came back, but I did get a letter from a lawyer about 2 weeks later. It was withdrawn 3 days after that. Turns out assaulting a police officer doesn't make for a strong plaintiff. 3 months along and terrified to say a single word about it. My boyfriend and I had been together for 3 years when I got pregnant the first time. We were 26 and 32. Stable jobs, our own place, everything lined up perfectly. When we announced it at family dinner, everyone lost their minds in the best way. My dad teared up. My stepmom started planning a baby shower right away. Even my sister seemed happy for us, hugging me and asking a million questions about due dates and nursery colors. But I should have known better. My sister has always been like this. If someone else gets attention, she finds a way to steal it back. She was 19 then, halfway through college with no job and still living at home. 2 weeks after our announcement, she started posting cryptic things online about new chapters and unexpected blessings. A month later, she told everyone she was pregnant too. The family reaction was completely different. My dad asked if she was sure she wanted to do this. My stepmom tried to have a practical conversation about finances and childcare. My sister exploded, screaming that we were all terrible people for not supporting her. She said I turned everyone against her, claimed I was jealous that she'd also be a mom. It was insane. She dropped out of school 2 months later, moved back home permanently, and spent the rest of her pregnancy posting about how she was going to be the best mom ever and prove everyone wrong. Then my son was born at 34 weeks, emergency C-section. He was so small. We spent 9 days in the NICU, 9 days of machines beeping, and doctors using words like critical and uncertain. I held him as much as they'd let me. My boyfriend barely left the hospital. On day 9, his heart just stopped. They tried everything. It wasn't enough. My sister had her baby 3 months later. Full term, healthy, no complications. I was still barely functioning, couldn't even look at baby clothes without breaking down. And she was posting pictures every day like motherhood was a photo shoot. Except the photos stopped after a few months. Now her son is 2 and I can count on one hand how many recent pictures she's posted of him, because she doesn't actually take care of him. My stepmom does most of it. My sister drops him off for days at a time so she can go out with friends or whatever she does. She doesn't play with him, doesn't read to him, doesn't do the basic things you're supposed to do with a toddler. He's not talking yet, just grunting and pointing at things. My stepmom brought it up once, suggested maybe he needed to see a specialist, but my sister dismissed her and said he was fine and everyone was just being dramatic. The worst part is watching her waste what I lost. She has a healthy child and treats him like an accessory she's bored with. Meanwhile, I spent 2 years in therapy, trying to function again, grieving what could have been, wondering what I did wrong even though the doctor said it wasn't my fault. When I got pregnant again 6 months ago, I cried for an hour. Happy tears and terrified tears all mixed together. My boyfriend held me and promised this time would be different. We told my dad and stepmom but agreed not to tell anyone else until I was further along. And we definitely weren't telling my sister. My family understood right away. My stepmom said my sister would absolutely try to get pregnant again if she knew, just to compete. My dad agreed. Even my aunt, who usually tries to give my sister the benefit of the doubt, said it was probably safer to wait. But waiting got harder as weeks passed. I'm showing now. I've told friends. Co-workers know. My sister and I aren't close and I rarely see her, so hiding it has been possible. But it feels wrong somehow. Like I'm being cruel even though I'm just protecting myself. Then yesterday she posted on her story, just a casual mention that she was manifesting a baby girl next year. Like it was a vision board goal, not a whole human being that requires care and money and attention. Just something she wanted because it sounded nice. She can't keep a job for more than 3 weeks. She doesn't pay rent. My stepmom supports her completely while also trying to raise a toddler she never signed up for. The father has been trying to get more custody because even he sees how checked out my sister is, and she fights him constantly. Not because she wants her son, but because she wants to control the situation. And now she wants another baby. I told my boyfriend about the post and he got quiet for a long time. Then he said we needed to tell her soon because she was going to find out eventually, and it would be worse if she heard it from someone else. He was right, but I didn't want him to be right. My stepmom called me this morning. She'd seen the post too. She told me my sister had been talking about having another baby for months, convinced that a daughter would be different, that she'd be more connected to a girl. My stepmom sounded exhausted. She asked how I was feeling, if the baby was healthy, if I needed anything. Then she said she supported whatever decision I made about telling my sister, but that I shouldn't feel guilty either way. The thing is, I do feel guilty, because my sister is still my sister, even though she's infuriating and selfish and completely delusional about her own capabilities. And because some small part of me remembers when we were kids and things were simpler before she became obsessed with attention and validation. But mostly I'm just angry. Angry that I have to hide something that should be joyful. Angry that my own pregnancy is overshadowed by worrying about her reaction. Angry that she wasted the gift I do anything to have back. My boyfriend says we should tell her this weekend and get it over with. He wants to rip the band-aid off. He'll be there with me when I do it. My stepmom offered to be there too, as a buffer. I know they're right. I know hiding it longer just makes it worse. But I also know exactly what's going to happen when I tell her. She's going to make it about herself. She's going to cry or yell or both. She's going to say I'm rubbing it in her face. And then, within 6 months, she's going to announce another pregnancy because she can't stand anyone else having something she doesn't. I'm a few months along with a baby I'm terrified to lose and a sister I'm terrified to tell. And I hate that those two fears have to exist in the same space. I teach middle school math, and most days I love my job. The schedule works perfectly for our family. My wife works as a physical therapist at a non-profit downtown, and we've got 2 adopted kids who keep us on our toes. Our daughter just turned 3.5, and our son is 2. Last August, something happened that I still can't wrap my head around. The school district where I work posted an opening for a physical therapist position. When I saw it, I immediately thought of my wife. The pay was incredible. $85,000 compared to the $65,000 she makes now. Better benefits too. Full health insurance coverage instead of the partial coverage she gets now. A pension plan. The schedule was Monday through Thursday, 8:30 to 3. Every single holiday off. Winter break, spring break, the entire summer. I printed out the job posting and left it on the kitchen counter. When she got home, I asked her what she thought about it. She picked up the paper and scanned it quickly before saying she didn't think it was for her. I pointed out the salary, explaining that it was $20,000 more than what she currently makes. She brushed it off, saying money wasn't everything. I tried another angle, highlighting the schedule and how she'd have the same time off as me. We could actually plan family vacations. She simply said she liked where she worked. I reminded her that she complains about her job constantly. She shot back that complaining didn't mean she wanted to work in a school. The conversation ended there. She didn't apply. A week later, her best friend asked if she could put my wife down as a reference for the position. My wife said yes and even encouraged her to apply. Her friend got the job. Now I see her friend at my building sometimes. She rolls in around 9, coffee in hand, looking relaxed. She's told me multiple times how much she loves the position, how the kids are great, how the schedule is perfect for her life. Meanwhile, my wife works 40 hours at the nonprofit, then picks up extra shifts on Fridays doing pediatric physical therapy. She says she enjoys the Friday work, but I honestly can't tell. She comes home exhausted every single day. Things have gotten worse over the past few months. She's constantly stressed, constantly snapping at me and the kids. Our daughter asked me last week why mommy is always mad. I didn't know what to tell her. Last Tuesday, I was folding laundry in the living room while the kids played. She came home from work and dropped her bag on the floor. She immediately asked why there were still dishes in the sink. I explained I was going to do them after I finished the load of laundry. She pointed out that I'd been home for hours. I told her I'd picked up the kids, made dinner, gave them baths, and started laundry. The dishes could wait 30 minutes. She said something about how it must be nice to have so much free time. I asked if we were really doing this again. She played dumb, asking what I was talking about. I said she knew exactly what I meant. She said she was just pointing out that I have summers off every holiday and get home at 3:30 every day while she works her butt off. I put down the shirt I was folding and looked at her. I reminded her that she could have had the same schedule but turned it down. She told me not to start. I said I wasn't starting anything, just stating a fact. She was offered a job with better pay, better benefits, and the exact schedule she claims she wants. She said no. She said it was because she didn't want to work in a school environment. I brought up her best friend, mentioning how she works there and loves it. She said good for her. I asked if she'd rather be miserable and blame me for having free time. She said she never said she was miserable. I told her she didn't have to say it because she acts like it every single day. The kids are scared to talk to her when she gets home because they don't know what mood she'll be in. She went quiet. Then she grabbed her bag and walked upstairs without another word. The next morning, I woke up to her already gone. She'd left early without saying goodbye. I got the kids ready and dropped them at daycare before heading to work. Around 10, I ran into her friend in the hallway at school. We chatted briefly, and she asked how things were going. I said fine, just busy. Then she told me she wanted to ask something. She'd noticed my wife seemed really stressed lately and wondered if she was okay. I said she was stressed and worked too much. Her friend said she still didn't understand why my wife didn't take the job, calling it the best position she'd ever had. I repeated what my wife told me about not wanting to work in a school. Her friend said that was weird because my wife used to talk about wanting to work in a school district when they were in grad school together. That stopped me cold. I asked her to repeat that. She explained that my wife always said school-based therapy was her dream. Better hours, working with kids in a structured environment. That's why she was so surprised when my wife turned it down. I told her my wife never mentioned that to me. Her friend suggested maybe she changed her mind. I said maybe, but I couldn't shake the conversation. When I got home that evening, I tried to bring it up casually. I mentioned that I'd talked to her friend and she'd said, my wife used to want to work in a school district. My wife asked when she supposedly said that. I told her in grad school apparently. She dismissed it, saying that was years ago and people change. I pushed back, asking if she really changed her mind about her dream job and didn't think to mention it. She asked why it mattered so much to me. I explained that it mattered because she's miserable and making everyone around her miserable too. I'm doing almost everything around the house. Dishes, cleaning, laundry, groceries, pickups, drop-offs. And she still finds reasons to criticize me. She said it was because I have the time to do those things. I said I only have the time because she chose a job that gives her no time. That was her choice. She said she made the choice that was right for her. I told her to stop punishing me for it. She didn't respond. She just stared at me with this look I couldn't quite read. I asked if there was another reason she didn't take that job. She asked what I meant. I said I didn't know and she should tell me. She said there was no other reason. She just didn't want it. But something in her voice didn't sound convincing. I thought about her boss at the nonprofit. How she talks about him constantly. How she lights up when she mentions his name. How she's never once criticized him despite complaining about literally everyone else in her life. I asked if her boss had anything to do with her decision. She asked what I was talking about. I pointed out that she seems to think pretty highly of him. She said he's a good boss and that's it. I asked if it really was just that. She called me ridiculous and walked away before I could respond. We haven't really talked since. She comes home, barely speaks to anyone, and goes to bed early. I keep thinking about what her friend said, about how working in a school district used to be her dream, about how she gave up $20,000 in a schedule that would have changed our entire lives. I do everything I can to keep this household running while she complains that I don't do enough, and I'm supposed to just accept that she turned down a better job for reasons that don't make any sense. The worst part is watching how she talks about her boss. He's maybe 10 or 12 years older than us. Married with kids? Seems like a decent guy from the few times I've met him. I've never seen him act flirty or inappropriate toward her. But the way she brings him up in conversation, the way she defends every decision he makes at work, the way she holds him in such high regard, it feels strange. I wonder if that's the real reason she stayed. Not because she loves the work, not because she prefers the nonprofit environment, but because she didn't want to leave him. I can't prove anything. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe she really did just change her mind about wanting to work in a school. Maybe she really does hate the idea of working with kids on individualized education programs despite doing similar, challenging work now. But none of it adds up, and I'm left doing 95% of the dishes, 70% of the laundry, all the finances, all the grocery shopping, most of the childcare logistics. I'm the one our kids run to when they're upset because they know mommy might snap at them. I'm tired of walking on eggshells. I'm tired of being criticized for having a schedule I worked hard to achieve. I worked in sales before this, sometimes until 10 at night, working weekends, missing family time. I made a career change specifically so I could be more present for our kids. Now I'm being punished for it. I'm tired of watching her choose stress and exhaustion when she had a clear path to something better. A path that would have given her everything she claims she wants. More money, more time, less stress, the ability to actually be present with our family. Instead, she chose to stay exactly where she is. Overworked, underpaid, constantly exhausted, and taking it out on everyone around her. And when I dared to point out that she had another option, she acts like I'm the bad guy. I'm currently in graduate school working toward becoming a principal. I'm building a future for our family. I'm trying to set us up for financial stability. We're getting close to the point where she could work part-time if she wanted. We could finally have some breathing room. But at this rate, I don't know if we'll make it there. Not with how things are going. Not with the constant negativity and criticism. Not with the feeling that there's something she's not telling me. Her friend loves the job my wife turned down. She gets to work with kids, maintain a reasonable schedule, and actually enjoy her career. Meanwhile, my wife is drowning, and she seems determined to drag the rest of us down with her. I don't know what to do anymore. I can't force her to take a job she doesn't want. I can't make her see that her decisions are affecting our entire family. I can't compete with whatever hold her boss seems to have on her decision making. All I can do is keep picking up the slack, keep doing the dishes and the laundry and the child care, keep biting my tongue when she complains about not having free time, keep pretending that everything is fine when our daughter asks why mommy seems so angry all the time. I love my wife, I love our family, but I'm exhausted too. And unlike her, I don't have anyone to blame but myself for the choices I've made, because I made choices that prioritized our family. I wish I could say the same about her. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.